Hi, welcome to the video. I've been away for a little while on a summer road trip with a family to Bavaria in Germany and in Austria too. So I thought I'd get back into the groove by picking up on the summer vinyl tag. The question's not this time set by Rob Walker. So Rob, you're sleeping on the job, mate. But I hope you're thinking about the questions for the vinyl tag for 2025. But I thought I'd jump on this as a way to quickly get back into talking about music again. So 20 questions. So the first one is an album or song with summer in the name. And this is Here Comes the Summer by the Undertones. Little story. This is a great 2LP compilation, by the way. Little story. The drummer, Billy Doherty, was married. In fact, married to the PA of a chief executive I did a little bit of a project for in Northern Ireland. I remember coming out at the end of the day and the PA was being picked up by a husband, and it was Billy Doherty from the Undertones. And I didn't have my wits about me to get an autograph, and it was before the days of, about 20 years ago, so before the days of selfies. But it was great. I met a member of the Undertones. Fantastic. I don't think I ever saw them live, by the way, but I've seen Billy Doherty in the flesh. Right, the second one, the latest heavy pull. I suspect that what's meant here is the album I've been playing, or the band I've been playing quite a bit most recently, and that is Joy Division. And this is a 2LP set, Martin Hannett's personal mixes. So we've got a little bit of a story in here, and it's kind of slightly alternative versions of the stuff that ended up on Closer and Unknown Pleasures. I think Closer really, but yeah, it's good. It's still great. Still sounds absolutely great. This is limited to 1,000. Yeah, limited run of 1,000 minus 945. Just got in under the wire. All right, Whack-A-Mole. This is inspired, no doubt, by Mazzy's own version of random pulls from the collection. So I've got to pick a random pull. So I'm not going to get off my ass. I'm just going to basically just go somewhere in here, pick an album out. Hopefully it's one I've been playing for quite some time, or quite a lot. And this is a really good album, a very good album, might even be my favourite album by this artist. And it's Running on Empty by the fabulous Jackson Browne. So there we go. The most wonderful song, The Loadout and Stay, which closes the album. This is an album, if you don't know, it's kind of pulled together from performances on tour, but in tour buses and dressing rooms and sound checks, and as well as live shows. Hangs together really well. Excellent album. Right, an album with a cover with an animal on it. This one has got an animal on it, and it's even got a title that includes the word animal, and that is Ruts DC with Animal Now. This is the first album they did after Malcolm Owen, the lead singer, had died, and they kind of decided they were going to continue. It's not a great album because the charisma of Malcolm Owen was off the scale, but they did a pretty decent job. And I saw them about 5 years ago supporting the Stranglers in Birmingham, and they are still a great live band. Excellent. So yeah, that's the Ruts, or Ruts DC, Ruts da Capo. Right, an album with a great story. The only story I can think of here, and I picked an album from the collection, and it goes right the way back to when I was starting to collect albums. And I bought this album, Genesis Foxtrot. Now, I didn't buy it. This was released in 1972, so I got around to getting it in 1973, I think it was. And it was back in the day when we all had pretty shitty record players. And record shops carried one or two copies, unless it was a new release. They carried one or two copies only. And I remember buying this one, and I was so excited at buying it. You know, I'd saved up money from my paper round, and I went in and I bought this album, and I got back, and the opening track, Watcher of the Skies, has this great big mellotron chords opening before the rhythm starts coming in, and it's like a piece of great classical sounding music. But about 30 seconds into the track, it has this click, but not just one click, about 10 clicks that goes round and round. It's so loud. But I was a young lad, crappy record player, no alternative copies available immediately, so I was reluctant to go back to the shop and ask for a replacement. Now I wouldn't hesitate, but I went back. Sorry, I didn't go back. I just kept playing it. So forever and ever, my first copy of Foxtrot has this horrible, horrible click, which makes this record, even though it's a Charisma label, a Porky pressing, mastering, just a the fantastic Charisma, the famous Charisma label. Oh, it's kind of, is it the first or second pressing? Something like that. But anyway, I'm lumbered with this record because I can't possibly sell it, because Watch of the Skies is an absolute classic, and I don't think anybody would welcome even a first or second pressing which would have such a horrible click on it. So there you go. That's my story. Okay, number 6, an album. All right, no, number 6, an album people would be surprised to find in your collection. None, because I've got broad tastes, jazz, classical, pop music, even a little bit of easy listening, of course, as well as classic rock and prog and so on and so forth. I don't share MJK Boston's interest in classic 50s and 60s country music, although I've got 1 or 2 LPs, but I do kind of like country music, and especially Americana, which came kind of a little bit later from the classic country style. So I've got such a broad range. I couldn't think of anything that anybody would be surprised by. So there you go. Number 7, Cheap Heat. I think this just means a cheap album. And I immediately thought of this album that came out in, when was it? 1975. 59 pence, the Warner Brothers Music Show. I think this was released just in the UK. Could be wrong. But this has some fantastic bands, but some fantastic tracks on this album as well. So what do we got? We got the Doobie Brothers, Graham Central Station, Feel the Need, brilliant. Little Feat, Montrose and Bad Motor Scooter, Black Water by Doobies again. Where is it? Oh, Tower of Power, Only So Much Oil in the Ground is fantastic. And Dixie Chicken by Little Feat. So 59 pence. So if you can find that compilation, it's absolutely fabulous. Right, a 45 RPM, which is the 10-inch Dire Straits Private Investigations on 45 RPM. And it actually came in a little plastic sleeve as well. Lovely, on the Vertigo label. So Private Investigations from Love Over Gold, and it was released before the album. So yeah, great. Where are we? Favorite music documentary, right? I thought of one straight away, and that was Black Wax by the wonderful Gil Scott-Heron. Now, it's got live tracks in this, but he's reciting poetry. He's doing long spoken word pieces on stage, and he's wandering around Washington, D.C., around the monuments and the White House, but also in the back streets, in the kind of ghettos, if you like, talking about social deprivation and politics and so on and so forth. I watched that again last night. It's absolutely fantastic. He was such a clever guy and inspirational, and so influential over rap and hip hop. But he's got that soul and jazz feel. He was just absolutely fantastic. But because there's quite a lot of live tracks on that one, I wouldn't declare it as a documentary. So I watched another one last night, one of my favourites, and this is One More Time with Feeling by Nick Cave. And this was mostly in the studio, but also at home, documentary about the making of the Skeleton Tree album in the aftermath of the death of his son Arthur. And it's moving. It's not mawkish at all. He's him and his wife are obviously going through the bereavement process, but there's no platitudinal easy answers here. He's confused. It's just wonderful to kind of tune in to, I guess, what grief looks like, and how it impacts the creative process. But that's a wonderful film. If you like Nick Cave or you're curious, that's a great DVD documentary. Right, a box set. Oh, here we go. Oh, just bear with me. This one's a heavy one. This is, how many LPs? 9 LPs. It's Bob Dylan, the 50th Anniversary Collection, 1964. And this includes, oh, here we go, a whole bunch of studio, live, radio, broadcast, and so on. You've got Columbia Studios, you've got Royal Festival Hall in London, Eric von Schmidt's house in Sarasota in Florida, BBC Studios, CBS Studios, Town Hall, Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, and so on and so forth. I think what CBS did is put out, I think it's a really low number of copies of this box set, but they put it out. It's kind of, I think, to reclaim the copyright. So this stuff could have ended up back in the bootleg series. Anyway, that's 1964. It's great. But they also brought out, one for 1963. I bought 2 copies. This one's still sealed. And then again, it's a series of stuff that I don't think has ended up on the bootleg series. But they've, as I say, reclaimed the copyright and it'll be eventually released. But in the meantime, I've no idea how much these are worth, by the way. They didn't cost me an arm and a leg, but they were just lying around in this record shop. And nobody was grabbing them, so I thought, well, why not? So there you go. My most thrashed album is an album I bought secondhand, and that is the debut album by the Rolling Stones. This is absolutely battered. You won't be able to see this on the video, I'm sure, but it's on the Decca, the red label. Oh, it is actually, it's scratched, but it plays great, and it's not like it doesn't jump. It just plays great, and it sounds really authentic with that kind of scratchy early 60s blues kind of stuff. It just works so well. So it's a steal. I think I picked it up for about a quid or something like that. So next to nothing. I don't know what it's worth again. I don't keep my music, my albums in plastic sleeves, but this one I have to, just in case it falls to bits. For collectors out there, it's the Mono LK4605. So that's the most battered album in my collection. A local album. Well, I live in the Midlands now in England, but I'm from Newcastle, and this is, so when I think of a local album, I think of Newcastle, and that is Alan Hull's Pipe Dream. And this, Alan Hull was the main singer and certainly the main songwriter in Lindisfarne, the folk rock band that came to prominence in 1970 with their debut Nicely Out of Tune. This was, I think, 1975 or something like that. Doesn't really matter, but it's early mid-70s. It's first solo album. It's really, really good, and lovely package as well, by the way. Like a booklet that's stapled into the middle. Great. Alan Hull, the great Alan Hull, died young, heart attack, poor guy. An album from a faraway land. Well, you don't get much further away than New Zealand, and that's Crowded House and Woodface. Fantastic album, of course. A soundtrack. Oh, another box set. Bear with me. Oh, and this is Installations. By Brian Eno. Brian Eno. Vinyl box set. Another 9 LP set. And this is for the music that he did, either made available or was commissioned for art installations. And it's a wonderful, typical Brian Eno album. But even on vinyl, the low frequency stuff really kind of shakes the room. It's fantastic, really good. So the Brian Eno music for installations, that's a soundtrack rather than a movie soundtrack. I've got loads of those. A high recommendation. I don't see this hardly ever in the vinyl community, but I keep plugging it, and that is Pat Metheny and Lyle Mays, As Falls Wichita, So Falls Wichita Falls. A wonderful, varied, ambient, experimental album, just with some acoustic guitar stuff and great keyboard washes. It's a beautiful, beautiful album. So that's a high recommendation. The highest on my wants list, well, I don't have a wants list. And when I go into record shops, I rarely find something that is that I really want, that I'd pay good money for. But I would like a vinyl copy of this album, and that is the debut album by the Canadian trio May Blitz. Now this is a CD rip of a vinyl copy on Vertigo Swirl that I borrowed from a friend who's kind of no longer a friend, sadly, and he wouldn't sell me this album, the bugger, but I'd love to get a copy of that one. So if anybody's in Canada, I don't know whether they hang around in the cheap bins in Canada, who knows, but you'd never see them in the UK. But I'd love that album on vinyl. A bit like Wishbone Ash, got a great sound. So it's kind of slightly hard rock with a bit of a folk tinge as well, but lovely album. I really like that, and I do play that quite frequently. The channel shout out, I'd go for. I've given lots of shout outs over the time, but I'll very quickly plug The Long Cut. Chris at The Long Cut. He's a big Americana fan in the US, of course. I think he works in the music business. He's a big Springsteen fan. He talks very emotionally about his connection with some of his favorite artists, and he talks about mental health issues, and I think he lost his brother as well. Interesting character. Definitely worth checking out. The Long Cut. So go for that. I'll put a link in the description of this video. The Steal of a Deal. I haven't got one. Most of the albums I buy, I'm always, and this has been me for a long time, I've always been on the lookout for a bargain. So I do occasionally buy more than one copy if it's good, but I'm useless at trading, so haven't sold an album for about 40 years. So I can't pick out an album. And finally, a promo, and that is an American remastered version of the debut from the Blue Nile, A Walk Across the Rooftops. And there it's got like a gold stamp for a promo. It's kind of a remaster. I'm kind of wondering, I was always kind of thinking, because I've got 2 or 3 UK copies on the Lynn label, but this is on A&M, and I was kind of just wondering if it sounded different, something slightly different to it, but I'm glad I picked that up, and I didn't even realize it was a promo when I bought it. So there you go, Summer Vinyl Tag, back in the game. I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching this one. Ta-ra for now.